So
Um,
here's another thing I'll say though. So often people will send me a DM on social media and they'll
mm,
say, "Hey, I don't think I have an eating disorder, but these are some things I do." Or "I do A, B, and C, but I don't think I have an eating disorder." If you even have that in your head, go see someone. Like, I'm not saying you have an eating disorder, but if you have to even say that out loud, there's something going on. Because if you don't have anything going on, you wouldn't even think about it. It wouldn't be something to think about, you
I'm
know?
glad that you said that.
Welcome to Good Enough with the Trauma Therapist, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to take control of your life, learning valuable strategies for healing, and looking at mental health through a trauma-informed lens. Get ready to feel empowered and confident in managing your symptoms. And now, here is your host, licensed clinical social worker, EMDR therapist, and certified clinical trauma professional, Jamie Vollmuller.
Welcome to Good Enough. I am your host, Jamie Vollmuller, and today I am here with Libby Suppan. Libby is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's a certified intuitive eating counselor, and she recovered from an eating disorder she had for over 20 years, which is why she's extremely passionate about the work that she does. And Libby has a therapy and coaching practice. She works with people who struggle with food and body image issues. This is usually people who are sick and tired of thinking about food 24/7 and want to be a normal eater. They typically suffer from the binge restrict cycle, and she is on a mission to help as many people as possible relearn how to eat properly. Libby, great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. Thank you for the intro.
So, since we're called Good Enough, right? I wanted your opinion because I'm not, I've worked with people with disordered eating, but they usually have a specialist in disordered eating as well. And I do the
Hmm.
trauma EMDR piece. Um, how do you, because this is your field of expertise and your lived experience, feel that the core belief of feeling not good enough plays into that disordered eating and body?
Yes, it's such a great question. And it's almost like everything.
It really
It's,
feel like it is.
yeah, it's like even thinking back to my personal story, I didn't feel good enough, like right before I start, well, not right before, for a little bit before I started engaging in disordered eating behaviors.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't feel good enough for reasons and things that were going on in my life.
Yeah.
And my solution in my head was, well, okay, just lose weight, even though I didn't have weight to lose. Um, so yeah, that's for me at least. And I think with so many people who start engaging in disordered eating behaviors and patterns, it stems from truly, there's something not good enough about me. There's something that's missing. There's something I'm lacking. I'm too much. I'm not enough. And that's
Yeah.
how it starts. And then I really believe that as the eating disorder, disordered eating, whatever it is that you have progresses, that gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
So, so true. And it really, I know for me, disordered eating, well, to some degree, I think a lot of women struggle with like their relationship to food. So I know for me, I have a not so great like if I am stressed, I binge eat like crazy, like not even joking. I went to the OB and in 3 weeks, I gained 14 pounds and was like,
Hmm.
all right, it was a really stressful 3 weeks. We're gonna have to cut back. But like
Yeah.
you just get into that mindset where it's like food is comfort and you just
Hmm.
mindlessly.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of the work that you do with your clients is around intuitive eating. So can you
Hmm.
explain to our listeners what intuitive eating really is?
Yes. Okay. So intuitive eating is very simple and it also can be very confusing.
Okay.
So the good thing about intuitive eating is we were all born intuitive eaters. Any human on the planet is born an intuitive eater. And so it's really like a retraining of getting you back to where you started. Even though, when I was going through it, it was like all of it seemed foreign to me. So intuitive eating really is an eating framework that encompasses body, mind, and spirit. And it considers not just like your physical body and like the health of it, but your internal body, how it's such a complicated answer and I wish it was simpler, but it's like, how can you be an intuitive eater with you and your lifestyle and the people in your life? Like it's so very individualized. So it's not going to look the same for me as it is for you.
Yes.
It's also about, living in a world to make the world convenient and easy for you. So if I am a person that doesn't like to cook, well, I'm not going to force myself to cook because the diet says I need to.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to make it work for me with whatever that looks like.
That makes sense.
And I hope that explains a little bit. It's just so nuanced.
It is. And I think for me, I try to do some what I was taught as like mindful eating.
Mm-hmm.
That's because like, I mean, even as a kid, like I would shovel food. Like I never learned to enjoy food. It was more just like scoff down your food,
Yeah.
eat everything because I came from an Italian family. And if you don't eat, like food is love, it's insulting. Uh,
Yeah.
so I was never really a mindful eater. Like I didn't taste my food. I didn't like
Yeah.
even chew my food half the time.
Yeah.
And like it was just setting aside time to like now in my life, like when I try to eat mindfully at work, it's like don't eat while doing a task. Like cuz I know I'm going to eat
Mm-hmm.
more, I'm not going to be aware of when my body is full or you know what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can, speak to that. So, when I first start working with people and we're at the stage where we're initiating intuitive eating, one of the things that you really need to work on is eating without distraction, like you're talking about. And that's so we can almost like hear what's happening inside because we're so conditioned to listening to these external factors of when to eat, where to eat, why to eat, the time to eat, like all of it.
Yeah.
And we stop trusting ourselves. We stop even having those indicators. So it's really important to eat without distraction, which no one wants to do because it is so uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially when you're someone who's like, doing your phone thing or talking or music or TV or whatever. So yeah, so what I'll do with my clients is I do this like food kind of check-in exercise.
Okay.
So what that looks like is so if I'm sitting down to eat, whether it's a snack, a meal, dessert, whatever, I have my food in front of me and I'm going to do this 3 times throughout eating. So before I start eating, I'm going to ask myself, okay, where am I at on the hunger scale? Which we can get into that if you want. Where am I at on the hunger scale? And how am I feeling emotionally? And what's my intention and goal for eating right now? Is it to enjoy my food? Is it to finish my food? Is it to slow down? Whatever it is. And then
Okay.
you do that 2 more times. You do it kind of in the midpoint of eating, and then at the end of your eating. And it doesn't mean you have to eat everything off your plate to be done. And it's really just a good way to kind of like monitor yourself and to stay grounded.
Yeah. So what do you do typically with women who cuz there's I I oscillate a lot. So like having this conversation is interesting for me because I never really get into my relationship with food because I think I'm mindful enough about my weight that I'm like, okay, we need to like not order Uber Eats at 1 o'clock in the morning and eat ice cream and all this jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also go to the other extreme where I get so stressed that I literally don't remember to eat.
Yeah.
What is that related to?
So, we all react differently to external things like stress, anxiety. So for
Yeah.
some of us, it's we our appetite increases. For some of us, it decreases. And with different feelings, it changes. Like it
Yeah.
sounds like for you, maybe when you're certain stress and bored, maybe, I don't know if you, maybe I made the bored thing up. Um,
Well, definitely a
okay.
thing.
Okay. So maybe you're like driven to go to use food during those times, but maybe with anxiety, your appetite decreases.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, in the beginning of intuitive eating, the most important thing is that you're eating enough, you're eating adequately. So, we always look at the food piece first. Like, you're eating 3 meals a day, 3 snacks a day. I mean, there's no rules or anything, but that's usually where I like to start.
Yeah.
Um, and even if you're not hungry, so like if you know you're a person like I get stressed out when I'm anxious, or I'm sorry, I lose my appetite when I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good to know. And you have to eat anyways. You don't, I'm not, I'm not going to make you eat your whole plate or anything. I'm not going to make you do anything, but it's like, you don't have to eat your whole plate or the whole meal. At least like take a bite of something. It's better than not eating at all because it keeps your body like knowing like, okay, this is something that we're continuing to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though. And I feel like it can almost help you to like break that pattern if you are doing it right. Cause I know for me, when I got in high anxiety mode and it's to the point that I'm not eating, I'm in chronic stress mode. I'm in
Yeah.
survival mode. I'm not taking care of me at all. Like self care is out the window. Clearly, I'm
Hmm.
not even remembering to feed myself. And it almost makes me think of like, that inner child that has all these conflicted feelings about feeling good enough, which is definitely triggered in times of stress for us.
Definitely.
Making sure that we're nourishing our own bodies and taking care of ourselves. And whether or not I'm hungry, my body still needs nourishment to
Yes.
run effectively
Yeah.
and to break this chronic stress.
Yes. Absolutely. I think like two things to that. One, eat anyways because we need the nutrients in our brain and we need to like even we need even more self-care to get through the stress, right? So like in this moment, yes, like nutrition is needed. And what happens and what happened to me, I remember when I was like earlier in recovery is I remember at the time I had a breakup and I guess for me when I have a breakup, I lose my appetite. So I honestly didn't really think much of it. I really just kind of, like you were saying, like, was just kind of like, I forgot. I mean, I knew, okay, you're anxious and you're not eating as much, but like, okay, whatever. I really didn't think much about it.
Yeah.
And that kind of went on for about a month. I mean, not that I wasn't not eating at all, but I just was eating a lot less. And then after that month, when I started feeling better, I started binging. And it's like, why was that happening? I was so upset. I remember telling my therapist, like, how am I here again? I did all this work and like, why is this happening? And so what I realized was your body doesn't know why you're not eating.
Mhm.
All it knows is it's not getting food like it should be. And so like regardless of the reason why, it thought I was trying to starve myself. And so when I started feeling more regular, more like normal, not as stressed or anxious,
Yeah.
my like regular cues came back, but it was like, oh, we've been starving. And like, we're going to give you an urge to like overconsume food and binge because you're starving yourself. We don't know when you're going to eat again. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense from just a biology standpoint and how
Yeah.
our brains are wired to help us to survive. So it's not a conscious thought. It's just our brains like, you've been malnourished. So now I'm going to prompt you now that we're not in these high cortisol stress levels
Yeah.
to nourish yourself because we don't know when we're going to be stressed again. And we need to make sure
Right.
there's enough fat to sustain the next cycle of you starving yourself.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes an awful lot of sense. How does this play into our family dynamics? 'Cause one of the things we
Mm,
talk about on the show a lot is intergenerational trauma.
yeah.
And I know for me, a lot of my body image issues definitely stemmed from the messaging I got. And that wasn't even like it's not like my parents were like, you're fat or anything. It's just observing my mother who was so weight conscious
Hmm.
made me very aware of my weight. And they wouldn't make like the direct comments, but it's those subtle like microaggressions that you get that just make you be like, "Oh, well maybe I shouldn't eat that because now they made a comment about it." And it sticks with you, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of that thing like, yeah, it's like your mom didn't, I'm not saying your mom, but like I'll speak for myself. So it's not like my mom said, Libby, don't gain weight. It was more, yeah, me absorbing her hating her body so much my whole life. And it's subconscious. So it's like what happens in our brains as kids in our upbringing is, well, wait a second. If my mom hates her body and I came from her body, like, what does that say about my body? Like, she's trying to like move away from this thing that she is. And maybe that's something that I am. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely generational trauma. And I am always so like just proud and impressed of the people I get to work with because, and I will tell them like, I just want you to know, regardless if you have children or not, you're breaking the generational like trauma patterns. And it's a big deal.
It really, really is. And I think that it's something I've been thinking a lot more about, especially now that I'm going to have a daughter, because I've had
Mhm.
sons but I just think it's very different. Like the mother-daughter relationship is just so different. And I know that I'm very, very hard on myself because I'm a people pleaser and I'm super self-critical
Mhm.
and all of that is valid, but I was really, like, been thinking a lot about, like, "Oh my god, when I give birth to a girl, I have to be so mindful of, like, I can't make those comments of, 'I look fat in this,' or 'I hate my hair today,' or 'I hate my butt,' 'cause she's gonna pick up on all of that."
Yeah,
And, like, it's our role to be confident women. So how do you ho what are some tools that we can use
totally.
now? 'Cause
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified, but not terrified because I have the insight to know that I make these comments, right?
Mhm.
And mostly I make them to myself, but I just anything that we can do to become more mindful of it so that we don't make our kids feel that way unintentionally. There's a cat in here that I'm gonna let out because she keeps
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. I heard the little scream.
right?
The little meow or whatever it was.
All right, go there you go, sweetheart. All right, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
So
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, so yeah, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Okay.
What you're the expert here.
So here's what I think. I think first of all, the fact that you even have awareness is huge. That's where everyone has to start. You have to even have any kind of knowledge that this is a thing and that maybe you're a person that maybe you need to look at what you're saying or what you're doing and you need to be mindful. I mean, seriously, most people do not have that awareness. So yay, good for you.
Who
Um,
knows? Years of
I,
therapy.
I
Years
think,
of therapy.
yeah, I think, depending on, knowing yourself and like what you think that you need as far as like help, I mean, I always encourage people to get help. And I'm not saying I think you need to go see like an intuitive eating person to get help or whatever, but I think just looking at your own stuff and I would say, if anything, like get the book Intuitive Eating, because it's so much more than so many people think intuitive eating is all about, like a diet book, like a nutrition book, and it's not.
Yeah,
It's so much about, it's all about the relationship to food with seriously who you are as an individual and like how to look at it, how to think about it. It's really just kind of almost like a brain retraining and how you look at all of it. So
yeah,
I would really say, whether you get the book, get the workbook, or just start listening to some of these types of podcasts, whether it's, body image stuff or I don't know, there's so many out there. I mean, I really think the best thing anyone could do is really work with somebody. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have to work with them for a year. It might even be seriously one session. But I think really getting clear and honest about what it is that's happening and what do I need to do to kind of look at me, because
yeah.
it's more than just refraining from saying it. It's like I don't even want you to have that thought in your brain to begin with.
Well, yeah, and that's what I try to work on with my clients too, right? Like, because they have so much it's a trauma response really is what we're talking about
Right.
here. And it's one thing to be aware of our trauma responses, which I have been for most of my life. I've been in very therapy for years and years and years. And the reason I got really passionate about like deeper trauma work, because it was like, yeah, I'm aware of it, but my brain still says mean things all the time. And that's
Right. You're
exhausting,
like, great.
right? Like, how do we end the cycle of like not even having to hear those thoughts on repeat anymore? And when you hear them over and over again and they feel true even though you
Hmm.
logically know they're not true, it's just so much more mentally, emotionally, physically draining on a
Yes.
daily basis.
Yes. And I'm really glad that you said that, because part of one of the big, like a huge thing I do with most all my clients is I have this, it's a brain retraining exercise and it's super simple, but it's basically calling out those two voices. It's
Yeah.
like your higher brain and then your lower brain, and the lower brain is all that junk. It's the stuff that we like, once you look at it, it's like, oh, you can see that this is false, but you
Mhm.
might still believe it. You
Yeah.
might still adhere to it. And so it's like doing this exercise over and over and over again, and just it's super repetitive, it actually does like remove that brainwave. And so you don't have the thought anymore.
Yeah, it's creating a new neuro connection. So it's less automatic to just go to this is my
Right.
default, right? Like we're training our brain a new way of thinking about food or thinking about our bodies or thinking about ourselves.
Right.
That's much more healthy than maybe what we grew up with.
I know. Another thing that I know is really helpful, and it was for me, and I'll have my clients do this too, is so if you're a person on social media, which I think most people are, to really clean up your account. So unfollow anything that makes you feel bad about yourself, even if it's like a friend or a family, just mute them for now. But definitely get rid of weight loss stuff like Fitspiration. If you follow like models or I don't know, those what I eat in a day videos or a day in the life, sometimes those can be super toxic and triggering. And to follow accounts that portray images of your size body and larger.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is our brain is so conditioned to seeing tall, thin, white that that's what our brain then seeks out. And we
Yeah.
think that that's right. And that now that's what I'm supposed to look like. But that's just because that's what we fed it unintentionally.
Yeah. And I very much agree with that. I'm now having to get big on social media
Ugh,
because to own a business, you have to
yes, I
market
know.
to be where people are, right? But it's been such a struggle for me in particular. And I'll say, like, even just getting on camera, right? Like, I don't have makeup on today. But normally I'm a girl that's like, I see my clients in jeans and like a t-shirt and my hair is in a messy bun. Like, that's
I
always
love
been
it.
me.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's because growing up, I had such an aversion to like what was being taught. Like, you have to care about what you look like and
Mm,
people are going to judge you. And I was like, I don't care if people judge me based on what I look like. Those aren't my tribe. Those aren't my people. And like, that's fine. It was really, really hard. Like for me, when I realized I'm gonna have to put myself in front of a screen, I was like, oh, I'm actually gonna have to like make sure I do my eyebrows, right? Like
I
because
know.
people do judge you. But I
Yeah.
don't spend a lot of time on social media because of that. It's our brains are so wired to
Yeah.
compare.
I know.
And like if you're constantly looking at that all the time, and there's also this aspect of like the people who look like that, it's their job to look like that. Like
I know.
look like a model like that. It's not my job to go to the gym and stay on a crazy diet
I
and,
know. They're
like
paid to do that.
they are paid to look that way, right? Like
Yeah.
when you are working and you have children and you have a family and you have all this stuff that you're managing, there is no way you're getting to the gym every single day. There
No.
is no way you're meal prepping every single meal.
Yeah. It's just not, yeah.
Monitor all of that. It's not, you can, but then are you really happy doing that? Unless the
Well,
gym is something that brings you joy, right?
sure.
If it's something that's a chore and you're doing it because you feel like unless I do this, I don't measure up, then
Right.
it's reinforcing this, I need to meet this crazy ideal standard. And more than likely, most women who feel that way, no matter how skinny they are, there's always someone skinnier. There's
Well,
always
right.
someone curvier. There's always someone, like
Yeah. And yes. And I like what you're saying because it's also like so often people are like, well, I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy. And it's like, okay, as long as you want to be healthy, you are making yourself more unhealthy with the stress you're putting on yourself. You will be better off if you just let yourself be than stress out about going to the gym every day and making all the perfect foods, because that's actually really unhealthy if it's a stressor. And if
yeah,
it's, so yeah, it's just not sustainable.
no. And that's really like what you're doing with your clients is like how to sustain like a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, like truly.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that if as soon as I say the word diet, my brain, like, revolts on me.
Ding. Totally. I'm like, nope,
It's like, "No
not
diet."
doing it. Yeah.
I literally now tell myself and I'll tell my clients, like, "I'm trying to eat healthier." So this way, if I do eat a cupcake at my baby shower this weekend, I don't feel bad about it because you know what? I didn't eat 5 cupcakes. I ate 1. And it's a special occasion, and I'm not gonna beat myself up because I ate something unhealthy. And I feel like when we say the word diet, it's so restricting that
Hmm.
anytime you vary from what you're supposed to do, we
Hmm.
just beat on ourselves emotionally so bad that then we wind up eating even worse because we're
Exactly.
like, I broke the cycle, so now it doesn't matter. It's
Well,
like you
exactly.
and it's fine.
Right. And it's like, as long as you're judging sugar, you're putting it on a pedestal. And when you put it on a pedestal, it's all you're going to think about. So, yeah, you can be eating the cupcake, but telling yourself, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you're eating the cupcake. You're going to have to work out for so much longer. I can't believe you're going to. And your brain knows you're not going to get this cupcake again. So it's very likely you're then going to go home and binge on cupcakes, you know? So, yeah,
I very much agree. I very much agree.
yeah.
So for you, like, how I know, because we got into some of your story, but like I know for me, though my childhood, like what I went through is so deeply connected to my work. And
Mhm.
most of us in this field, it's so deeply connected to what we
100%. Yeah.
but like how did that journey come from you? Because I think sometimes it's easier to speak from our own personal experience than it is about our clients, right?
Yeah.
Um, how did you like get into intuitive eating and on that journey to recovery? Because
Yeah.
clearly 20 years is a long time to struggle with an eating disorder.
Yeah. So yeah, at some point, when I finally when I realized I had a problem, which is when I started doing the binge eating, that's when I was like, okay, well, this is a problem, because I thought restriction was just, oh, I'm just better than everyone else, you know. Um, so yeah, so when I finally realized I had a problem and this problem was not going away, um, I was just it was like my whole life's mission was to find help, and I could not find help. My insurance would not let me go to treatment because I wasn't underweight. Um, I just sought out, I don't know, probably like 20 different therapists before I found the one that, stuck for 23 years. Um, how did I completely just lost my train of thought? Oh, never mind. I got it. Yes, I'm telling my story. Sorry. I looked down at one thing. So yeah, so at some point, because I knew after so long, I know I'm not the only one with this problem. For many years, I thought I was. Like, seriously, there's something wrong with me. But I promised myself, like, seriously, Libby, if you ever get better, I can't not then help people do this. I just can't. So I really just made a promise to myself that that's what I'm going to have to do. And no joke, I had 65 jobs before I became a therapist. I was a mess. Not saying that that makes you a mess if anyone out there's had a lot of jobs, but it was, yeah, pretty chaotic, my life. So yeah, so basically I finally got accepted into real like eating disorder treatment. And that's really when kind of the seed was planted. So before that, because I wasn't able to get into treatment, I did what I could. And what that meant is I was part of a 12-step program for 15 years that yeah, it made me a lot sicker, and I didn't know that at the time. I didn't realize it until I got into treatment and was able to see, oh my gosh, this whole like program was based on restriction, which was just making obviously the problem stronger and deeper. So
Yes.
yeah, so I got into treatment and then went to graduate school and yeah, became an eating disorder specialist as a therapist. And then I think it was in 2022. Wait, 20, yeah, I think in 2022, I did the certified intuitive eating training, which was seriously just awesome. Yeah. And so that is how I got into it. And I'm so passionate about helping other people get to the other side.
It really shows. One of the things I made a note, right? So that like for for you, and I know I'm not speaking for everyone that's in this population because we all have different lived experience, but I think that um because being small and being physically fit and healthy and appearing a certain way is a value, um, it can be like, what are some of the warning signs, I guess? Because in our brains, I think it's easier for people to see restrictive eating as a positive. For example, like
Right.
I have someone in my family who's like, I'm concerned for her, but she doesn't think it's an issue yet. But she's like, oh, I'm only vegan and I'm gluten free.
Mm,
And all of these restrictions just keep piling on.
hmm.
But in the meantime, they're withering away. And it seems more like a defense mechanism of like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just eating really, really healthy. But it's like, but you don't look like your face
Yeah.
looks
You don't look well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what is it that like reinforces that for people? And then after that I'll ask you another question. But
Yeah. So do you mean the kind of like what what are some signs to see if somebody's struggling?
Yeah, like that if it's truly a positive, like they're healthy eating, because I think that's
Right.
what people tell themselves, right? Like, I'm just being healthy.
Right.
But where does
Yeah.
the being healthy cross over into this is no longer healthy for us, and this is
Right.
becoming a session
Yeah.
that we're mentally justifying in our head?
Yeah. So it's not actually in the DSM yet, but there is an eating disorder called orthorexia, and it's basically the obsession with like the clean, healthy eating. And oftentimes, like orthorexia turns into anorexia, and they kind of, hang around with each other. But yeah, I mean, there, I think so often too, it's the way somebody talks about what they're doing. Because if you're truly healthy, it's not something you're going to talk about. It's like just something that you do. You're not going to think about it,
Yeah.
because it sounds like whoever you're talking about is totally obsessed and, talking about it. And I mean, I used to be like that too. So I think, yeah, so things to look out for are just changes. So, like, do you notice that they're eating a lot more? Do you notice that they're eating really fast? Do you notice that they move food around their plate? Do you notice that they immediately go to the bathroom after or before they eat or during eating? Do you notice them? Are their clothes different? Like, are they dressing differently? Is their makeup different? Like, and I think, and I'm saying this more maybe with like adolescents and teens, like, so for parents to look at, but,
Yes.
cause it can almost be like a personality change kind of, it
Yeah.
like can become your identity. And I'll give you an example. So I have this one client and, um, she ended up having a lapse. So she originally was, restricting anorexia, and she had been in recovery for, quite some time. She was doing great. And then because of perfectionism and being in all the AP classes and all of that, she started restricting again. And as this is happening, she wasn't telling me, she wasn't telling parents, nobody saw, and I'm virtual. So I didn't see her physical body. But during this time period, I'll call it like maybe 3 months, I did notice her makeup really started changing, like a lot more. She started having like more kind of like stylized like hairstyles. I noticed kind of her tone changed a little, like almost like kind of a little bit standoffish, if you will, kind of maybe nonchalant, like
Mhm.
wasn't getting as deep in our sessions as I
Progress.
was used to her getting. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also knew that at this time, she was talking a lot about going clothes shopping. So finally, after, dad, she gets caught, and then I find out, and, she tells me, and I said, these are some things that I've noticed in the last 3 months. And as like, a therapist in what I do, I have to also be really careful about pointing out things that I see because of, that could be also really triggering. So it's kind of like, in therapy, it's like it's creative, it's an art,
And
it's
sometimes
science,
if
it's
you tell the parents, you also have to monitor, like, how is that parent's reaction going to be? Is their
right,
response going to make this behavior worse or better? How do I
right,
prep that in helping them to support their child? Because
right.
sometimes you tell them things and then they overcorrect, and that makes the child feel even less like they have control and intensifies the behavior. So I get it.
Exactly. Yes, totally. So so when I pointed that out to her, like, well, these are some of the things that I saw. Like, tell me, like, is I'm assuming this is part of the eating disorder. And she says, yes, absolutely. And I said, okay, this is really good to know.
Yeah.
So, you know, if this happens again, like, what are some things I would notice? And so we kind of had that conversation. So yeah, I think it's just, really seeing somebody make some shifts and changes, and maybe it's in their personality, or maybe they're isolating more, maybe they're partying more. I mean, it's so many different things. It can be so many different things. And I know you didn't ask this, but I'll say it anyways, because I think it's really important. So if you are somebody that's concerned that somebody else in your life is struggling, how you approach this is crucial. Make sure it is private. It is just the two of you. And I always preface like this kind of a conversation with like, hey, there's something I wanted to bring up. Um, is this an okay time? Because they might be, I don't know, not in a great place. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. What's up? I just I really love you. I care about you. And, these are just some things I've noticed in the last month. I've noticed that, when we eat, you're not really actually eating your lunch, you're giving it away. And I really just wanted to see if, like, are you doing okay? Like, how are you feeling? Is everything okay? And that's it. And there's no judgment.
Yeah, that's super important because everyone, from my understanding, right, eating disorders is related a lot to control. And when we feel the need for control, that's because we have either some anxiety issues or some
Yeah.
some serious trauma that's going on that's making us feel like this is what I can control.
Yep.
Right? So, if you're judgmental, it's just gonna get that's with anyone in the trauma community. We're just gonna be like, "Yep,
Right.
guard is coming right up because already I don't feel accepted and seen and heard and valued." So
Absolutely.
is really great advice because we have a lot of parents that listen and that's great advice on what for them to look out for.
Yeah.
Great advice on how to approach it if they need help. For the people who are listening who are like, maybe I have some disordered eating patterns. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things that they like? One of the things that you said in your bio, right, was the food as like an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it in front of me. Like, but what are the signs that like you started realizing like,
Mm,
oh, this is an issue. Like I'm doing this or or your clients start to
yeah.
realize do you, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like at what point, yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to know when you're you because you're in it and it's so subjective.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, at some point, it's like, oh my, wait, hold on. How is my whole life now? All I do is think about what I eat, what I can't eat, what I should eat. If I'm going to do this, then what does that look like? If I'm going to eat this donut, then how much do I have to work out? It's waking up immediately thinking about, okay, what am I going to eat? What am I not going to eat? Oh God, what did I eat? Like, what did I eat yesterday? And whatever I ate yesterday dictates like what I'm going to do right now. Um,
So it's just that
yeah,
non-stop, like the food and you're eating and what you're not eating and your relationship to food is so intertwined within your day that it's literally part of your plan.
right. And when you notice it starting to affecting your actual life. So like, I know for me, like I didn't want to go out to eat with my friends or family, so I wouldn't. Um, yeah, and I just remember being like so upset. Like, why would they want to go out to eat? I mean, I was so young, I was in high school, but but I mean, it was still like that when I was in college, and I had the awareness, and I definitely knew, and I just, for me, yeah, I knew there was a problem, and I did not want to. I just seriously wanted to be normal. It's like, please, just make me normal. At some point, I don't care what my body looks like. Just make me normal. You know
Just make not my every thought about what I'm putting in my body and what I'm not putting in my body and how I need
exactly.
to work out to balance it all out.
Yeah. So
Um,
here's another thing I'll say though. So often people will send me a DM on social media and they'll
mhm.
say, "Hey, I don't think I have an eating disorder, but these are some things I do." Or I do A, B, and C, but I don't think I have an eating disorder. If you even have that in your head, go see someone. Like, I'm not saying you have an eating disorder, but if you have to even say that out loud, there's something going on. Because if you don't have anything going on, you wouldn't even think about it. It wouldn't be something to think about, you
I'm
know?
s glad that you said that because I think that, sometimes when we put labels on things, right, it's like, "Oh, well, my stuff isn't that bad, so I don't need
Yeah.
help," right? But even without the label of, like, disordered eating, anorexia, bulimia, any of that jazz, if we have a really unhealthy relationship with food, let's say, like, just like me, right? Like, I don't have an eating disorder per se,
Hmm.
I know my relationship with food is definitely not the best.
Hmm.
Like, how does intuitive, eating and coaching in that aspect help those people to just develop a better relationship with food and themselves?
Yeah. I don't even know if I could answer that because it's just, I mean, it's so much. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, it would be like I said kind of earlier. So the first thing is let's look at what you're eating and what you're not eating, and let's just start there. And and also and this is like there's like all these markers in the intuitive eating work that people are just, I'm always like, okay, here's the next thing we're going to work on. So it's the giving yourself permission to eat, which most people are just terrified of, but it's like you have to do that. And guess what? During that process, you're probably going to be binging more. And
Yes.
it's okay. It's okay. And also, like, it's like it is about the food and it has nothing to do with the food because it's mostly how you think about it. So you're still going to be binging, most likely, if you're somebody that was already binging. But if you can not take it personal and just try to let the power go,
Yeah.
it is setting you up to not have another binge. But when you judge yourself, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Oh my God, it's setting you up to just
Yeah,
continue.
like you were saying earlier.
Right.
So is it like more, because it sounds like what you're saying is more about like teaching self-love regardless of your size, regardless of how you look, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is really important for just women in general, because most of us don't like the way we look. We judge ourselves all the time. If we put on a little, like my sister-in-law, like she just put on a little weight and she's so obsessed with it now. And I'm like,
Mm,
still look beautiful. Like you've had 2 kids, like you're a size 6. That's not an end of the world affair, but
mhm.
it's like earth shattering. And it's learning to accept ourselves and our bodies that like no matter what size we are, because we have worth that's independent
Right.
from our body image.
Right. And yeah, and so much too, it's the power we give it. It's like, okay, so, okay, it like things happen in life. Like you said, you had 3 weeks of stress. Okay, you gained some weight.
Yeah.
And as long as you can say, okay, yeah, that's because of this situation, it will be much easier to then lose that weight than
Yeah.
if you are like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm gonna have to go to the gym. I'm gonna do it. Because then you're starting this whole like
Nope.
brain thing.
Yeah, and that would have been, for me with where I am in my pregnancy and how high risk it is. I can't go to the gym. I can't work out. I'm not allowed to lift anything above 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And we know that like cardio is not going to burn this off either.
Right.
Um, so like if I got into that cycle, like that would have just led me to be like super depressed and down the rest of my pregnancy. And I was just like, all right, okay, we're going to be more mindful of that and maybe
Hmm.
make a rule that I'm not going to Uber Eats at 1 o'clock in the morning, or at least I'm only going to do it once a week. Like, let's just try to find like a reasonable goal.
Yeah, or it's like, yeah, or like, okay, what is this about? Am I truly physically hungry? Is it like, am I wanting comfort? Yeah, just like looking at it.
For me, it's always about like food. Food, I was raised Italian. Food is love. Food is comfort. And it's
Yeah,
never reaching for like, oh, let me have a Caesar salad.
like a
It's like,
carrot.
yeah, like it's like, no, when I'm like stressed out, it's like, where's the ice cream? Where's the brownies? Where's the chocolate? Where's all of the sugar and
Hmm.
carbs? Like I'll just eat loads of pasta, like anything
Hmm.
that's not really nutritionally dense, right?
Right,
But then that leads to a cycle of then we feel like less energy the next day because we
right,
ate stuff that really wasn't great for our bodies. And, so
right.
learning just balance, I think.
Totally. And yeah, what I was going to say too, it's like there's nothing wrong with emotional eating unless that's the only like tool you have for your emotions. So yeah, it's like it's also totally okay to do that as
Yeah.
long as it's not like, really negatively impacting your life.
Yeah. 14 pounds in 3 weeks, that's not sustainable, right? So it's like you got to change that up a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's really like you said, just finding that balance. And for me, that's what I realized is like, oh, I'm really stressed and I'm relying on food as my only way of coping with
Hmm.
the stress. And a lot of that is it's harder for me to exercise right now. So that was
Hmm.
how I was coping. So I was like, all right, we're gonna work in more meditation. We're gonna work in more like
Yeah.
yoga nidra and like
Yeah.
walks in the park and other things because I love nature. Like, what else can I do to make myself feel
Hmm.
better? Let's sit outside at least for an hour a day.
Hmm.
And just being mindful that you're in this thing without that judgment and what other resources do I have right now that can help
Absolutely.
me so that I don't keep beating on myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm loving this
I
conversation.
am too. I can talk about this with you all day long.
So, all right. we're about to wrap up, girl. So I want you to tell our listeners, I know because therapy is restricted by state. So as a therapist, where do you practice, dear?
So I am licensed in California. So for therapy, as long as you are physically located in California, we can work together.
Okay. For coaching, which is a bit different than therapy, and can you explain to the clients like what they would get with you as an intuitive eating coach?
Yeah. So coaching, I can work with you a few different ways as a coach. I can work with you individually, which is like very similar to the therapy work that I do. And I also have a coaching program, like a group coaching program. And there's lots of things. So I have like a course curriculum online with like videos and workbooks and handouts. I have like a whole community where we can like engage with each other. I don't know, it's a platform called School. It's kind of like a Slack thing, but better. Um, and then we have like a few group Zooms a week where it's like Q&A and I always do some kind of a training. I also have like, you have an opportunity to have one-on-one time with me once a month. Um, and yeah, I'm mostly excited right now about my group coaching program. And I don't think I mentioned this to you because I think it's newer since you and I scheduled this, but I do have a link I can give you if you wanted to. It's about like a 30-minute training.
Yes, I think when we originally scheduled, you were like, "It's not up yet, but hopefully."
Okay, then yeah, I have it. I
So
finally have it.
I didn't ask, but yes,
Okay.
I will definitely drop that link in the comments. So can you
Okay, cool.
explain for our listeners what that is for? So that's your free giveaway to our listeners so that they can work on.
Yeah, so it kind of goes over, why we're in this problem, what this problem is. I talk about, the sugar addiction. People think, they're addicted to sugar and that, you can't be addicted to sugar. You can't be addicted to food. And yeah, it just kind of goes through how to look at it. Is this you? And like a 3-step kind of way to look at it or process. And then if you like what you hear, in that little training at the very end of it, there'll be a button you can press if you want to do a strategy call.
I love that you're doing group coaching because I think there's something about um going through that experience that feels very othering and shameful and isolating, and to
Yeah.
have other people that have been through it just like really is so important for addressing that, like, I'm not alone in this. There's other
Yeah.
people that have felt this way. I'm not like absolutely crazy because I struggle with body image issues or my relationship with food. And I can just imagine how healing that is for those clients, because the select clients that I have worked with have felt like I can't talk about this with anyone because
Right.
everyone's going to judge me.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful that you're building that community.
Yes. I love the group thing too. Seriously, as a client, I love being in group programs.
Yeah, group programs are truly, truly amazing. So in this group program, you are doing the group coaching calls. They also have access to you said once a month individually. Um, and
There's a
can,
whole digital course.
oh, there's a whole digital course.
Yeah.
That's
It's
so
it's a
significant.
lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Okay, girl. So you are just, would this be appropriate for, because we have some therapists that also listen in, for clients that we have that how difficult it is to find someone that specializes in eating disorders.
Yeah.
For those clients, is that like a program we would refer them to, or is there a certain criteria of people that you take?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely been therapists in my coaching program. And I actually found them. Are you in the what is it? Therapist in private practice group on Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we connected in that group. She was asked. Anyways, doesn't matter. But yes, I definitely work with therapists, and yeah, and we would figure out if this is a fit during the strategy call. If they feel like I'm a fit and if I feel like they'd be appropriate.
So for therapists that want to refer their clients to you,
Hmm.
are there certain restrictions in where they are in that process before you're willing to work with somebody?
That's a good question. So I did this one time. So I really don't take somebody with an active eating disorder,
Okay.
because you really have to have kind of like a level of
Wrap around.
um yeah, yeah, because I don't feel like it's necessarily appropriate, because it's not considered, my group coaching program is more group rather than individual.
Yeah.
So I would really like determine that on the strategy call, kind of like where you're at and what this looks like. And I have brought on people that do actually have an active eating disorder, but they're seeing an eating disorder specialist as their therapist. And then they're doing the coaching thing as well at the same time. And then me and the therapist can collaborate and talk to each other.
Okay. So if we have any listeners that are like, I'm listening to this, I feel like maybe I need Libby's help, they should definitely go to the links in the show notes and contact you. And if they are active, then are you able to help connect them with somebody that you trust in the field? Or at least
Yeah.
like, is there like for EMDR, which is what I do, there's like a national body that oversees that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just find a list of
Mm-hmm.
providers. Is there the same thing in the disordered eating world?
Yeah. There's so many different, like, I don't even know, like list serves and like all that stuff. Yeah. I have all that stuff.
Okay. So Libby, if this is resonating with you guys, if you feel like I've always struggled with body image or my relationship with food, definitely reach out. I think that is sounds like a really beautiful, beautiful program. And if you need more support, this girl is going to help you access what you need so that you're not waiting 15 years for a therapist.
Seriously.
who can it's so sad because
Yeah.
even here in like New York, we have a lot of counselors. Like we have a lot of therapists in New York. You have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of therapists in California, right? Like we're not an underserved like community
Mm-hmm.
as far as like professionals, but it can be really hard to find someone that specializes in disordered eating because of high risk it is medically.
Right.
And then you need to coordinate that medical piece that
Mm-hmm.
it prevents so many clients from getting the treatment that they need.
I know. Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
so glad you're here to help them.
Me
It was
too.
lovely having you on today. I want to remind our listeners that they are good enough. Till next time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Good Enough with the Trauma Therapist. We appreciate you listening. While our host may provide some personal and professional advice, we want to remind you that this show is for entertainment purposes only. Each individual situation is unique, and Good Enough is not a substitute for mental health treatment. If you need a therapist and are located in New York or Missouri, feel free to reach out to us at liendr.com or resilient-mo.com.